Welcome to Normalize You, your place to help us redefine normal. I'll be your host and your moderator, and I'll be here to help the world understand you and to help you understand the world. I just have two questions for you. What does the word normal mean to you? And how's it going, everyone?
yoU.
Doing good. How are you?
Can't
What's
complain.
up, Ashley? That's what's up. uh, I know a few episodes ago we spoke about accountability, holding yourself accountable, like what we can do to hold ourselves accountable when we're right, when we're wrong, and the changes we decide to make. But we often don't talk about what we do when we find out we are wrong. We pretty much like glance over that a little bit. We're like, yeah, we're wrong. And acknowledging it is one point, but what do you do when you find out you're wrong? Do you then go apologize to the people? Do you try to make amends? Do you admit that you're wrong? I feel like that's another thing that we really don't talk about as a society.
Yeah. A lot of times, this is one of my sayings, especially because I know me, how I act. I'm always right until proven wrong, and I usually use that based on like the knowledge that I have. But once you prove me wrong, I'll be the first to admit, like, oh, okay, yeah, I was wrong. That's on me. Um, I think a lot of times when you live so long with a certain amount of information or just specific information that it's kind of hard to admit you're wrong until you can actually be proven wrong for a fact. So because of that, like a lot of people have a hard time saying, "Oh, well, okay, I was wrong," because they thought for so long that they was right about a specific subject. So sometimes it can
Um,
be good.
oh, okay. I think in a certain sense you have to think about this question or this concept in a few different ways. Because, for instance, you can have the one situation of like you realize you're wrong, but you've already burnt the bridge. Like it doesn't matter going back to the other person to say you now know you're wrong because it's been too much damage. Like you'll just have to take that as a life lesson and move forward and admit that that was somewhere where you made a mistake, even if you're just admitting it to yourself. Um, I think if you're able to have the conversation with the person, I think we need to normalize at least in some way acknowledging that you were wrong. Even if part of what you said was right, if part of what you said was wrong, you still have to acknowledge that and not just try to glance over. Uh, for instance, by way of example, I've had situations where it turned out I was right, the other person was wrong. And instead of having any type of conversation or recognition about that, it's just oh, let me go do this for you to make up for the fact that I was wrong. Like there's no acknowledgement that they were wrong. It's just let me go do this to make up for it and try to move on and act like it never happened. Um, and I think sometimes just the recognition goes a long way. Like that doesn't mean somebody has to yell and scream at you or anything like that. But I think sometimes having that recognition and that acknowledgement that I was I was wrong um, goes a long way.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually do agree with that. But sometimes using your actions to show that you were wrong can also be just as good as saying admitting that you were wrong too. Because sometimes it takes more than just saying, "Oh, okay, I was wrong," but then if you see someone acting like, okay, they say they were wrong, but then they're still acting as if they're right, well, okay, you know you're wrong, but you're still acting like you weren't. Sometimes it's sometimes it might actually be better to show with your actions that, okay, yeah, like you said, let me do this for you as a way of saying I was wrong, because maybe those actions show that, hey, I've learned from my mistake, I've learned from my wrong, so let me show you that I learned that what you were right about.
So I just want to clarify. So in my example, I'm saying like if somebody's instead of acknowledging that they were wrong, They're like, oh,
Mhm.
let me take you out to dinner. They're not
Okay.
actually doing the better behavior or changing what was wrong in that action. They're just trying to now do something for you, as if doing something for you, like paying for your food, buying you clothes, or something like that, is going to change the fact that you caused this problem and you were wrong.
Okay, so it's like basically like your example is like, okay, they're just changing the subject. Like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
Subject. Okay, I got you.
right. Or it's like they can't admit out loud that they were wrong. So when they do realize they're wrong, even on their own mind, they just start doing things for you as a way to be like, oh, okay, I was wrong. I'm never going to say it out loud, but let me go do these nice things for you as a way to make up for the fact that I was wrong. But that doesn't necessarily equal change behavior. I, of course, 100% agree. Change behavior is the answer. And that comes up in relationships, work, everything. Like, change behavior is the answer. If you never tell me you're sorry, but your behavior changes, I can get over not having I'm sorry or I was wrong. But, you know, sometimes that change behavior takes a while,
Yeah.
which would warrant, to me at least acknowledging, because sometimes half the battle is that people don't take the time to realize you were wrong. And maybe you come to that acknowledgement by yourself. Like maybe the other person didn't prove it to you, and but maybe you've come to that acknowledgement for yourself.
Um, I agree with everything everyone is saying when it comes down to your own particular way on how you cope with, being wrong and how you mitigate the situation. I was actually writing down a few things while y'all were saying what you were saying, because it was giving me more of a thought on how to get deeper into this conversation. Because as I stated before, sometimes it's more than just surface level. Sometimes it's deeper, and it takes a little bit of a dive and a little bit of patience to even find out like the deeper meanings behind these things. And one of the things I wrote down was, when you're wrong, what do you do to fix the situation? Where it's like, because just because you're in a situation where you are wronged, like you are the one that was being done wrong, you yourself can fix the situation. Because sometimes it's about forgiveness, and it's about like, you can hear something the wrong way, even if someone says something to you wrong. If you yourself take it the wrong way, then it becomes a deeper situation than what it could have been initially. Not trying to deny or minimize the mistake from the other party, because they made a mistake. But if they're willing to apologize and say, hey, look, I messed up, what do you do to make sure everything stays good on your side?
With that one, I think, and I don't want to make it solely dependent on the other person, but sometimes it does depend on the other person and how they accept it.
No, at
And
this point, hold on real quick. At this point, I'm more so like, I'm trying to put the focus on you, 100% you.
I
Like,
know.
what do you do? Like, I get that it is the other party, and the other party is responsible because they were the one that was wrong. But what do you, as the person that was being done wrong, how do you handle the situation?
No, I was getting to that. I was saying like how I handle it depends on how the other person reacts to it. Like, let's say they're like they just don't acknowledge it. I can accept that they don't acknowledge that. And so in other words, I would just leave the situation where it's at. I'll still learn from the situation. I'll just know, okay, that's just a situation I won't go back to. But if it's where, okay, the other person can admit they were wrong as well, or they can accept that I know that I'm wrong, I can move forward with that person or that situation with them. So, like personally, if it's just me admitting that I was wrong, okay, I learn from the situation, I figure out how I can do better next time, and I just leave it as a lesson learned. If it's based on an actual situation where it's like there's more than one person involved and either both were wrong or the other person was right, but they are just choosing to respond to it in a particular way. How I respond to me being wrong, like, okay, yeah, I'll still admit that I'm wrong, but if they respond to it in a negative way, I'll just leave the situation alone. Like, okay, I understand you feel that way. The way you're responding to it is very negative. Understandable. You have every right to feel the way you do about it. I'll just leave the situation I'll just leave the situation alone. I'll count that I was wrong and just be done with it.
Okay, hold on, Taylor. Before you answer the question, I'm gonna give you the same question, but a little bit different way. Do you
Okay.
think there's ever a time when you are the one being done wrong, where it requires an apology from you?
Yeah, I have to say yeah. Um, because even though I could be the one that's been wronged, my reaction to it could have made something so much worse. And sometimes our reactions aren't based off of the wrong. So, like for instance, if I ordered a hot chocolate with no whipped cream and somebody still gave me whipped cream and I start cussing them out, yeah, they messed up my order, but why was that worth a cuss out? So even though they messed up, I still got to apologize too because my reaction took it so much further than it needed to go. Um, Also, sometimes I feel like, and this is just me because I know not everybody does this, but this is just me. I feel like I have to apologize for trying to put how I would react in a situation on somebody else. So, yes, if you've wronged me, there are certain things that I would do if I was the one doing somebody wrong. I can't expect everybody to do those same type of things. So if somebody's wronged me and I'm like throwing a fit because it's 2 days later and they ain't apologize, maybe that's not how that person works. Maybe they're just gonna change their behavior. So now I've made the situation worse because I had certain expectations of how I felt they were supposed to respond. And I mean, if I'm able to have a conversation, sometimes that does warrant an apology on my part because I expected you to be me and I have to expect you to be you.
Okay. Answer that same question that you just Taylor.
Mhm.
Um, well, this has actually happened quite a few times with a particular person that I deal with in my life, especially like recently. There's been times where I might have been right, but how I responded to the situation, definitely out of I was definitely out of my own character. I'll be honest about the fact that like, yo, what I said, I feel the way I felt. Like how I felt when I said that, what I think, all of that is true and nothing's going to change that. But how I responded to that, yeah, I was wrong. Like I can admit that I was wrong, but I'm going to let you know, like, yo, I still feel that way. But how I responded to it, how I how I interacted with that situation, I was in the wrong. Regardless whether or not I feel like I was right about what I said, how I presented that was wrong. And a lot of times where if I feel like I responded to a situation incorrectly, I'll admit that, yo, I responded to it incorrectly, but I still feel or think the same way of what I said. Like I'm still going to admit, like, yo, I feel like I was right. I just presented it in the wrong way.
Y'all pretty much said everything I would have said myself, whenever it comes to that, because there is, in my opinion, moments where just because you were the one that was done wrong, you can't apologize. Because like Taylor said, you can apologize solely on how you made somebody feel. And that goes to my next point where I was like, admitting that you are wrong at times can open up people's want to open up to you. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, because I think in any relationship you may have, and not just talking romantically, but professionally, family, friendship, whatever, um, it's hard to want to be vulnerable with somebody that can never admit that they're wrong. It's hard to like build with somebody that can't admit they're wrong. Because then you start questioning why do you think you're always right? Do you feel like you have nothing to learn from other people? And that just leads you down a rabbit hole of second guessing everything. So if somebody's willing to admit to you that they're wrong, that's a show of strength, in my opinion, because it's not easy to do that, but it is necessary. Um, because anytime you tell somebody like I got into a debate with these two and we stopped talking for like the next 2 weeks. And it turned out I was wrong. Yeah, I'm sending a message saying, yo, I messed up. It was my fault, blah, blah, blah. And they don't have to forgive me, but at least I've taken the step to show I recognize my own errors and I'm willing to grow from them and acknowledge them and everything else. And if you can't acknowledge that or admit that, it makes it harder for somebody to want to grow and build with you. And it could just be growing in terms of, oh, we're just becoming better friends. Or I was going to share this with you and now I'm not because I can't even trust you to admit if you're wrong. Because the other thing is, in any relationship, if you can't admit you're wrong, how can you tell somebody else when they're wrong? Like that becomes an accountability thing. It's hard for somebody to trust when you say you're wrong, when you're telling them that they're wrong, if you yourself can't admit when you're wrong.
Yeah,
I
I
expect
definitely see.
to be able to tell me when I'm wrong. If I tell you something and you can't tell me if I'm wrong, then I'm not telling you no more of my stories. I don't care. Somebody's gotta be able to look at me and be like, all right, Taylor, hold on. You're being a little extra. Or, all right, this was valid, but you took it too far. Like, somebody's gotta be able to check me. And if I can't trust you to check yourself, how can I expect you to check me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
or do you remember exactly what was said, or do you need me to reiterate?
I was gonna say, like if when it comes to dealing with people who can't even admit when they're wrong, honestly, I'm the type of person where, especially if you're somebody that's close to me, I'll almost limit communication with you almost together. And the reason that is like if you can't even admit when you're wrong, just normal conversation and communication with you is almost obsolete at that point. It's like, what's the point in even talking to you if you can't even admit when you're in a place where you're wrong? It's like saying you're never at fault. You never take accountability for yourself. That means that no matter what I try to say to you in any capacity, there's going to always be a breakdown in communication somewhere, somehow, for whatever reason, even if the reason doesn't even need to exist. Like, okay, let's say me and you were just talking and we get into a heated argument and I'm right about it. And you just refuse to admit that you're wrong. Like, okay, cool. You don't have to be wrong. I just won't talk to you. It's like I don't see where we can possibly have any type of common ground if I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong about something, but you can't. It's like I'm 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 talking to I'm talking to a brick wall. It's going in one ear and out the other, and there's just no point in even trying to communicate with you because I know there's going to be no comprehension on your end. That means communication has failed. So instead of me shutting down, I'm allowing. I, I don't like the way it's going to how this is about to sound, but it's like the best way I can put it. I'm forcing you to shut down for me, so I don't have to deal with you. I'm not going to even give you the chance to start back up because, like, there's no point.
I completely understand when it comes down to a lot of stuff because anybody that knows me knows two things about me, and I say it often. And one of those things is I'm not wrong often, and that's not for me to say I'm not wrong, nor is that for me to say, hey, I'm almost always right about everything I say. That can be taken based on how well you know me, or just how well you indulge yourself in information. Where it's like I read a lot, whether it be small things, whether it be little pop-ups on my computer when I'm working in the office, whether it's learning from a friend, a family relative, a stranger, whether it's me reading a big book or something like that. Like I just like to learn stuff. I like to know stuff. So I won't often open my mouth about things that I don't know enough about.
But
So
oh, you can prove him wrong. It's such
yeah, and that's the funny part because it's it's not a lot of times that I'm wrong. And like I said before, it's not due to me not actually being wrong. It's learning how to not say nothing if you don't have all the information like in front of you. sometimes you got to just not say nothing. It's okay to not be a part of every conversation, because when I am wrong, I want people to let me know I'm wrong, because that's a bit of information that I can know, which then later on makes it so that I'm not wrong about that particular topic, and it further increases that I'm not wrong often. But that's not to say that I'm not wrong. And with that, I also say I don't care if I'm right or wrong. I just want to be heard. And I'm a victim of doing that to people too, where if sometimes people start a conversation with me, like they're arguing with me, or they have a disagreement, and they start off the conversation wrong, I tend to cut them off. And I know that creates bad vibes, that creates a bad environment, it creates a bad mood. And now that person may not want to talk to you later on because they feel like you're argumentative. Whether that can be true or not, it just creates a bad reflection on how you initially saw the conversation going and how you could have fixed it. So for me to mitigate that would be just, let people speak. Same way I want people to just hear me, whether I'm right or wrong. I feel like my flaw is giving people a chance to speak when they want to be when they want to speak, so they can get their point across. Because, like, even though I'm not really a person that vents a lot, I don't let my frustrations out. That's not to say that when I finally do, I don't feel better. Like, I feel tremendously better. I feel like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Even if I don't plan on telling somebody else something about me for the next like 8, 9, 10 months, it's at that particular moment I feel relief. So I could be like withholding someone else from being able to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think one thing that happens often is that, and this is a lesson like one of a family member teaches me often, even in my adult life, is that sometimes it's not about what you say, but how you say it. And so sometimes it's not that you were wrong in your reasoning, but you are wrong in your delivery. And people were sometimes don't acknowledge that because they're so busy on focusing that their regular point was sound, like your facts were straight. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, your facts may have been straight, but you used a bunch of curse words and that like you were demeaning or you were condescending. Like, there's a way to get your point across while still being respectful. And I think that needs to be more normalized than it is today, because I feel like in today's time, sometimes half of the disputes that happen aren't over the facts, but over the delivery of those facts.
Yeah, I
We're
can
so
definitely
busy
say,
trying to prove, sorry, we're so busy trying to prove that we're right. We're forgetting that you still have to present this information in a way that somebody else can digest it. Sorry.
yeah, I can definitely say I've actually been guilty of that one. It's been a lot of times where, especially if I'm in a situation where the person just is refusing to hear what I have to say, instead of me trying to show tact in my delivery, I'll just stop caring about how my message is presented and be like, no, you're going to hear my message regardless how I deliver it. So because you aren't trying to listen, now you're going to have to deal with how I deliver it. And I don't care. And that's definitely something I've been trying to work on myself, because like a lot of times that brings tension with me and other people. And although I still feel sometimes like, since you don't want to hear what I have to say and you need to hear this, it doesn't matter how I say it. I realize that sometimes it really does, regardless whether they want to hear it or not, it really does matter. And that's definitely one of my flaws. Like, I definitely have to work on my delivery and tact sometimes.
I think that brings up an interesting point though too, is like just because you're right doesn't mean you have the ability or the position to force somebody to understand that you're right. Sometimes people just aren't in a space to receive what you're saying. And that's not like saying you're wrong, but you would be wrong for trying to force them to understand. Sometimes you just have to take a back seat and let people come to the conclusions on their own, whether you're right or not, because you're going to create yourself being wrong because you're so busy trying to force prove a point.
I think that's why for me it's like I think it's very important for people to communicate, because some of the things that let's say you're in a relationship with somebody for, and I'm using this because that's more things that can, I don't know, I guess there's a closer a bond when it comes to people's relationship status. When you're in a relationship with someone, like you're married, involved, just, together. Um, Something that you may find small and be like, well, this is a small mundane fact. They don't have to know this about me, or this isn't they have a behavior about you have a behavior about yourself that you may think is small, and then 10, 15 years down the line, that comes out of nowhere, and then it becomes bigger than what it could have been 10, 15 years ago. And now you're creating an environment where it's like, hey, that person now has to kind of learn a new defense to the things that you just brought to the table. It's like, if you told this person that 10, 15 years ago, they probably would have found a way to like not let it bother them so much. So you bring it up now, it's like now it becomes a little harder to digest, a little bit harder to see your perspective, kind of see your point. So now it's like whatever information you may have had they may have had towards that particular set of information that you gave them, their response is a lot different than what you thought it was going to be today, just because you've been with that person for a while, not realizing that a long time ago, if you just expressed that teeny bit of information, it could have changed a lot.
I think that goes into like sometimes people are so on guard um, that you feel like, oh no, I got to keep this to myself, or I got to keep a part of me for myself. But I say this to relationship, friends, family, like I want to know things. I think when we started this channel, I said my word was curious. I like to know things. That's a downside because sometimes I'm a little pushy, but in general, I like to know things. And so, because I feel like knowledge is power. So, like, if I know there's this one thing you do, okay, now I know. Like, for instance, I have several friends who sometimes they just go MIA, just dip off the face of the earth. They ain't talking to nobody. They gotta have their moment to themselves. And I have
It's me.
multiple friends that do.
It's me.
It's not just you.
It's me.
It's not just you.
Talk about me. Tell me what I do that. No, I'm serious. I'm being so serious. I'm putting myself on the
I
spot.
know
Tell me. Talk
it
to me.
wasn't just you, but since he said him, he has a really bad habit of when life gets stressful or he just feels like he needs a break, he escapes. And when I say he escapes, I mean nobody knows where this man is. This man could be in Cuba for all we know, or in freaking Japan. We don't know. And he's not responding to any messages. He will tell you when he comes back, he read every single one. That used to piss me off to another level because I have my own traumas when it comes to abandonment and everything else. So we had to have a very frank discussion one time after he did that of like, if you're going to do that, at least respond and say it's not me. Because sometimes my first thought is you're not responding to me because there's something I've done and you're not sharing with me what I've done. So now I'm having a freak out trying to figure out what I've done to piss a friend off. And it had nothing to do with me. Now, the next time he goes MIA, or the next time after that conversation, I at least got a, hey, it's about that time again. I'm about to be gone. I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Does that mean I liked not talking to him for 4 months or however long it was that time? No. However, I had more ability to respect it because we had had a conversation about at least give me a heads up. That's what I mean in terms of like right or wrong. Is it right for him to necessarily do that? Probably not. I could throw a big fit, be like, bro, you gotta be a grown man, you gotta do this, blah, blah, blah. Like there's some conversation and some reasonable minds could disagree about whether that's right for him to do that. But that doesn't matter. Like me trying to say like you're wrong for doing that in the first place didn't matter. If we were going to sustain a friendship long term, that had to be addressed though in some way. And so that's what I meant earlier when I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't matter if you're right. You still have to deliver it in such a way. And luckily I was able to deliver it in such a way because he actually hates when people do that to him too. If you're mad and you don't tell him it's not him, he gets frustrated too because he doesn't like confusion. So I was able to not play in terms of like manipulate, but I was able to play on the fact that me and him both don't like that situation to be like, you know how you don't like this? That's what you just did to me, bruh. Help me out here.
That's why I say it's good when it comes to communication, because for somebody to have an issue that they have, well, obviously have an issue with, and then another party has an issue, then you find out the similarities. And just because the issue, like for me, it's like I hate being around people and you're mad about something that has nothing to do with me. I mean, absolutely nothing. You might have been to work and then somebody could have stolen your stapler, and you're mad about that. And then you come home or go around with people, and then you alienate yourself, and then people will constantly try to, hey, you good? You okay? Give you space, a couple of hours. You're sharing the same space, you're sharing the same area, and they don't say anything to you. Then come to find out 4 or 5 hours later, they weren't mad at you in the first place. And I'm like, just let me know. So how she was able to inform me on how that made her feel, and that being why it, even though our situations don't have the same start, they have the same finish. Where I don't like people ignoring me when it's not me, and at least Liz letting me know. She don't like people ignoring her, and it don't be her and not letting her know. It's like, even though our situation started differently, they both have the same outcome. We're like, we don't like being ignored. And I don't care if you ignore me. Like, if you have a day where you want to just be by yourself, that's different. But if we're going to frequent the same spot, especially when, and it kind of leads up to my next point, I'm going to get to that in a minute, it makes you feel the type of way where it's like, did I do something? And um, it falls into my next point. I'm going to go ahead and just say the point now. Um, do you think we put a lot of pressure on people when we expect them to be perfect? And
Yes.
I'm glad you answered it. I was going to say, before you got into the conversation, no, it's weird that it's not weird. It's not weird, and it is weird that y'all making these faces, because there are people out here that would be like, no, I expect everyone around me to be perfect. Hence this normalized you station even being presented. Like, the
No,
reason
and I,
why it bothers me, hold on real quick. The reason why it bothers me so much about the scenario that I just brought up, where if I'm around somebody for a couple of hours and you're mad about something that has happened to you personally, for one, you're not talking and telling me what it is. So I don't think we're as close to what you think we are. Two, you're deciding to, regardless of how much that person breaks their back, regardless of how much pain that person, I've gotten cussed out by so many of my friends because I will dang near be on the verge of a heart attack at work just to support the people that I care about. I would almost fall off a cliff, break an ankle. Matter of fact, I remember breaking a leg one time, and I still try to keep it moving for everyone else. I broke my hand. It's like I done been through so much with people, and it's like it bothers you when you look at that person and be like, "Hey, are you okay?" But you're not gonna take it upon yourself to let me know it's not me. And I'm like, and the reason why that bothers me so much is it's a lot of pressure being expected to be perfect. And I'm not saying I'm perfect in every single manner when it comes to what people expect. What I'm saying is there's never a day where I take a day off. I know I'm not perfect and I don't want to be perfect. That's pressure. Like, but imagine when you wake up every day and your goal is to drive, like in the sense of like your dedication, your steadfastness, your ability to just want to get things done with people that care about you. And there are a lot of people in life that can't do what you do. So you work harder to make sure they're good. And it's like, you can't just let me know it's not me. Because as a person who thinks that they're doing everything the right way, and not to say that I can't do anything wrong, it's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to like ethic, work ethic, like your ability to get it done because it has to be done. You don't cry about it because it doesn't make things go faster. It hurts when you don't know because you think it's you. And it's like, so for me, I'm gonna give the world a secret. I have a big fear of failure. Like, and it's not the same fear of failure that a lot of people will have. We're like, man, this, that, and the other. Of course, everyone fears failing. You turn a test in, you don't want to get a bad grade. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm always referring to no matter how hard I go, I'm not doing enough. And life has dealt me that hand where people can't walk up to me and tell me, hey, get it together, think about it, sit back and meditate and pray on it. That's not how it works for me. It's like, because no matter what I try to go to mitigate the situation, I still feel like I fail when I work my hardest and I don't get the results that I'm looking for. And that's why it's kind of hard for me to start projects. It's kind of hard for me to jump into a lot of projects solo. And a lot of it is because I never got a chance to talk growing up about like how things made me feel without getting some type of like pushback. Which goes back to a couple episodes ago where I was like, it's not for you to tell that person that dealt with that trauma if they have dealt with that trauma. It's your place to listen. If they're lying about their trauma or anything like that, or how it made them feel, that's for them in the long run. That's for that person to figure out within themselves in the long run. But for you at that particular moment, you have to hear that person's trauma because you don't know how it affects them. And you take a big risk by not believing that person. You could not believe them. That's cool. But over the course of time, 10, 15, 20 years, here you go apologizing and being like, man, I didn't know that made you feel that way a certain couple of years ago. You should just believe me.
I feel
And
like
I
a
think
lot
it's,
of
oh, go ahead, Darren.
I feel like a lot of times it's not necessarily pressure to have someone do something perfect or for them to be perfect, but for in our eyes, it'd be perfect if they did it the way we wanted them to do it. And I'm saying this from both sides, from the side expecting it and the side being expected.
Mhm.
It's been a lot. It's been a lot of times where I've been put in a position to accomplish a task or just simply oversee something, and I would feel like, okay, I'm doing well enough. I'm doing well enough to make sure the job got done the way it the way it needed to be done. And whether it been someone who had some type of authority over me, or just somebody outside of it that had some type of opinion because it wasn't done the way they expected it to or the way they wanted to. Now I'm being approached sideways as if I'm the one that's in the wrong. And it's been a lot of times where if I felt like, okay, you're putting this pressure on me to do it the way you want it to be done, but the way I did it, not only did it get the job done, it got the job done with very little stress. Now I'm upset with that person and I'm ready to just knock their block off, either either physically, figuratively, or whatever, because now I feel like you're pressuring me to do it the way you wanted to do it, and the way I did it was fine enough. It got the job done. There was no added stress, anything extra that needed to be done along with it. There was time for that to get handled. And now, if it's an authoritative figure, I kind of understand it to a degree. But if it's just, oh, you're just somebody that's just there, you're not going to talk to me any type of way because, well, what needed to be done got done. Doesn't matter how it got done because nobody got hurt. There was no negative side effects to how the task was finished, and I'm trying to figure out why you're reacting in such a negative way. Good, Taylor.
But I'm gonna say this part before you go real quick. When I was referring to being perfect, I'm not referring to everyone's like immediate definition of perfection. I'm more so referring to like there are things in life that you do where you're expected. Well, it's not that you're expected, it's like you hold yourself to a degree. Where it's like you work a certain job, you expect to make a certain amount of money just so you can maintain the life that you have. You expect to be the perfect protector. You expect to be, and I'm referring to like your relationship. I'm more so referring to like whether it be a friendship or anything like that, like that role that you play. Like, okay, for example, Darion, like if we ever go out somewhere, not if, when we've ever gone out somewhere, when we were growing up, did you ever feel like you were in danger when I had your back?
No, not really.
And why?
That's just the type of person you are. I don't want to say it like, oh, it's your job to protect people, but you've just always been a very protective person. Even if you knew that I was in a situation where, yeah, I could handle my own, you've just always been a very protective situation, a protective person.
So,
I can actually give a very specific example, especially me realizing what you were saying back then. Even then, I understood. It was what, my 18th birthday. We had just gone to see the first Zombieland that came out, and me, like a little idiot, I let somebody else use my phone. And I really didn't want to. And I'll admit I felt a little pressure too, but I also was trying to be a nice person at the same time. And I let them see my phone. But then I'm like, okay, they had my phone for a little too long. Okay, I'm gonna get my phone back. And Jeff like, nah, you might not want to do that because it's like 6 against 2. Granted, we had other people with us. They weren't in our immediate vicinity at the time. It was literally just me and Jeff. So it's like, although yeah, I'm pretty sure yeah, we probably could have taken them in a fight. But considering how many of them it was, along with the presumed character they were giving, yeah, it wasn't exactly a smart idea to try to go get that phone back. I mean, I got a new one the next day off my own money anyway, so it really didn't matter.
And that's funny because that's the point I'm trying to make. Like where you go out with me and you don't ever think. And same thing for Taylor. There's been moments where things have been iffy, and she wasn't in the position she needed to be in, so she'll call me and be like, "Hey, just walk me home safely." In the sense of like just being on the phone, and I'm like, that's an expectation. Not as much as y'all don't like. I'm sure y'all aware of it, but that's an expectation. And there's never been a time where, from my recollection, that y'all have been around me or needing my protection, quote unquote, and I wasn't there to provide it. And that's an expectation. That's that's a particular expectation of I'm always expected to be the perfect provider, like perfect protector. It's like I have to be there. That's not what happened. And it goes down to like finances. You with somebody, you got to develop a lifestyle. Your job is to provide financially. Okay, you got to be the perfect person to help that person emotionally. You got to be the perfect person to help them this. You got to be the perfect this. That's a lot of pressure. And then it goes back down to, and I don't want this to be that particular conversation, but it's like, what do you do? Like, what do you do to make that person not feel like they have to do this every single day? Like, what what happens in your head where you're like, okay, maybe I don't need protecting this day, or maybe I don't need this, but since you are the one that provided, like, how do I make you feel like you're not wasting your time doing that? And that's why I said it's a lot of pressure when people expect you to be perfect, because the moment that you fail, knowing that you've been good at every single thing you do, like that can bother somebody. Like I am known, and I go back to protection. I'm known to protect like my friends and my family that I care about. And something happened to me, and that bothered me the most because I wasn't there to protect that person. And it comes down to like finances. Like you with somebody and you give them everything they want, but then it's like, what happens on the day you're not able to give them what they want? You're with somebody in the sense of like emotional. You got their back. You cry on your shoulder. They come to you every time they got an issue. But what about the day where you both have a hard time and you're not there to have them cry on your shoulder? What happens then? These are the things that people don't think about, and how much it can affect everybody. Which is why I say I would fear failure, because I always feel like I have to one up myself the next day. I always feel like I have to one up myself, and I'm always thinking about what happens when I don't. That's pretty much what I was talking about.
Okay. If I had to give an example of an expectation of me being perfect, I'd have to say me being that supportive friend or just supportive person in somebody else's life. Just like how you say, like, you're always expected to be the protector. I've been into a lot of, well, I've been in several situations where I've always been expected to be that supportive person. And I'll admit that's mainly because a lot of times I put myself in that position. Um, I can actually give an example. And not that you necessarily expected it, but it was on one of our camping trips. And you were going through some stuff mentally and physically, possibly. And we were trying to find our way out of the trail that we were going through. And aside from me and Jeff, a lot of people there, at least to my knowledge, didn't necessarily show an immediate example of survival skills. So me and Jeff kind of went ahead forward to see just how far this path went down and how much further we were going to have to go. So a lot of time, well, in that during that times, like, okay, I remember him saying something to me before. If something happened to me, like, you probably have to be the one to help everybody out. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. Like, especially with me having the skills that I have, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'd have to be quote unquote second in command in the group in order to have to make sure everything else is straight. And a lot of times, and I know I have some leadership skills, but I don't care to be the leader. I don't want to be the leader. A lot of times I usually put myself in the support role because I know, like, I have the know-how to lead, but because I don't want to be in the front, it's better for me to just support anyway. And a lot of times I'll let people take the lead because I know that, oh, okay, well, if you screw up, I can just do what I have to do to make sure everything else goes straight. Or if you're going through something, even if you don't screw up, but you're compromised in some way, I can be there to help you out because I know that I have the skills to make sure that you aren't just completely on your own.
I think the part that bothered me the most about this situation, which it's funny that you brought that up, because that's still the epitome of what I was saying, where it's like it was a dangerous situation. Like things were just bad, and people were on the brink of a lot. And at that point, it was just survival. And I mean, nothing crazy. It wasn't extreme. Like we weren't that far from civilization. It was just a matter of like routes were taken that I knew that weren't the right routes. But once again, letting people talk. It's like you want to go that way, cool. I know this particular area. I know how deep it gets. I know how treacherous it gets. Enjoy. Nobody wanted to listen to me say no, so they did it. I followed them. So when it was time to to backtrack and go back, no one they lost their route. They lost sense of time. They lost sense of distance. They lost a lot of things. We were so far away from the main road that our walkie-talkies that we bought literally like reached its maximum amount of range. And this is the part where I was like, where I said the expectation of being perfect bothers me so much. I almost suffered hypothermia. This was on my birthday. Like I almost legitimately would not have been here the next day if I would have collapsed and passed out. If Darren didn't run beside me and keep me up moving, I wouldn't be here today. That's a true story. The part that bothers me the most isn't the brink of hypothermia. It wasn't, and I'm not just saying hypothermia in the sense like, yeah, I got no, like my bones were aching, my bones and my meat from my legs, like they wanted to detach. I kept wanting to strip, even though it was like what, 13 degrees outside? Like I kept feeling hotter and hotter and hotter. And then on top of that, I was getting dizzy. I was starting to lose my sight. I was losing color. It was just different things. I'm talking about in my sight, in my skin. Like I was just losing the ability to see different colors. So it was different things that was happening. And the part that bothered me most wasn't the me having to save people that did something I told them not to do in the first place. It wasn't people disagreeing with me. It wasn't the hike. It wasn't them getting lost. It wasn't the danger. It wasn't the borderline hypothermia. It's the fact that when I got everybody to safety, no one said thank you. Because everyone expects me to just be there and be like, yeah, he got my back. It's not how that works. Because what about the day that I don't? What about the day where I need help? And the reason why I don't really socialize with people in life a lot, like I usually do things by myself, is because I don't trust anybody to have my back the way I have everyone else's back. Like no one. There's not a person on this planet that I would call in regards to me being in danger. Not one person. But moving on to our next point. So think about that. Just think about that. Like, what about the people in life that you look at and you put them on such a pedestal? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you make them feel like there are days where they don't have to? Like they come in the house after work, they work their butt off. So what? You did too. So what? But at that particular moment, they feel worse than you. Go rub their back. Go cook them dinner. Don't run them a back. And it goes for anybody. You could be male, female. But it doesn't matter. It's just the fact of if you feel like you're in a position to make someone else feel appreciated, just do it. At this point, it doesn't matter just because you feel bad. What if they feel worse? Just think about that. But our final question when it comes to this particular topic before we wrap it up Why not why do, but do you, and if you do, why do you feel like you have to be driven so hard into admitting that you're wrong? Like, why is it that when we're right, we're like, hey, yeah, I'm right. Like, you just know that off the back. Even if people think they're right and they declare being right, or they even finish their sentence, or they even finish their statement. But when it comes down to being wrong, why do we feel like that we pushed so far to an edge? We got to be beat over the head with information. We got to be lunging to have the death just to admit that we're wrong. And if you have a personal experience to that, like you, make it a story as to why you think that way generally, and you, what a moment that you've been through with you were the one that had to get beat, have the death to admit that you're wrong.
With me, especially not even just growing up, but even into young adulthood, there's been a lot of situations where I was just told, look, just say that they were right and be done with it. And it always rubbed me the wrong way to just be able to say, okay, you know what, you're right, I'm good. Because I would know that in the situation where, okay, I know I'm right, but you're not willing to allow me to show you or prove to you I'm right. So with me, when it comes to me saying, "Oh, I know I'm right," yeah, you gotta show me proof that I'm wrong because too many times I've had to accept being wrong when I knew that I was right. Or even if I didn't necessarily know whether or not I was right or wrong, I knew based off of the information that I had, I was right, and the other person or persons weren't willing to listen. So with me, it's like a lot of times you have to show me that proof. You have to like literally prove to me like, yo, Darion, you're wrong, before I can admit that I'm wrong. Because me, I'll be the first person to admit that I'm wrong, but you got to prove it to me first, or else in my mind, I'm going to always be right. Prove me I'm wrong, and I'll be the first person to admit it, and I'll act on the fact that I was wrong. But if you prove it to me, I'm right as rain. Because too many times I've had to accept being wrong when I knew I wasn't. And I can admit that, yeah, sometimes that makes me a bit difficult to deal with, but because of how often and how so long I had to deal with that, just accepting being wrong when I know that I wasn't, yeah, it makes it more difficult for me to have to deal with other people, not just other people dealing with me. So it's like, if you can prove to me I'm wrong, we have no issue.
Um, I think for me, if it's been a situation where I've had to get beaten over the head to, accept that I'm wrong, it's because whoever was trying to beat me over the head with it or something usually is a person that they take you being wrong as a negative mark on your character or something like that. Like, I know you're the type of person that will hold over my head for the next 20 years that I was wrong on this one instance. Or you're the type of person that will hold um, somehow find me deficient because I was wrong that one time. So, I mean, I deal with those type of character traits. It's like, no, you're gonna beat me over the head to show that I'm wrong because I already know how you're gonna be about this. Not to say that that's a positive reaction to that, because probably should just let it go, but that's 9 times out of 10 why I'm doing it, because I already know how you're going to be if you happen to get this victory. Um, and alternatively, sometimes there's just so many emotions involved, depending on if it's a family situation, relationship, whatever it may be, that I'm. It's not even about whether I'm right or wrong anymore. And you can more notice that after the fact, hindsight being 2020. But it's about how it made you feel that you feel like you can't afford to be wrong. Um, like you're fighting for something deeper. Like how Jeff says, it's always something deeper beneath the surface. Like you feel like you're fighting some deeper battle than just the basic of I'm right, you're wrong, or vice versa.
It's funny because I wasn't looking for a particular answer to that, but that was the answer that was on my mind. Like I feel like it's a deeper battle to it, where a lot of people feel like they got so much to lose by being wrong. Like if you're around somebody, it's like you let's say you're a parent and you got like your army behind you. And I mean like your family, your wife, your husband, depending on what it is, your children behind you, and it's like you're in an argument with somebody on the street. Like at that particular moment, not on the street, but however healthy but most damaging conversation you can have with a person that's not a threat to you in a sense. Like at that particular moment, you can't afford to be wrong. Like you're looking back like, dang, if I'm wrong in this situation, like how do they look at me? You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like more so what I'm not more so, but that's kind of what I'm referring to also, where it's like sometimes people just be in situations where it's like I can't afford to be wrong. Like this is all I have, and it's like especially when you're in a position where it's like you like okay, so okay. So as I said before, I don't like I take pride in information. I take pride in learning the little bit I can learn. Not to say I'm smart, not to say I'm dumb, not to say anything like that, but I do like to read anything that pops up in my face. I read it. And um because I go through so many different things where I have a fear of failure in general, like I take pride in being able to know that I'm right. Like once again, whether I'm right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's just about being heard. But in the sense of whatever information that I regurgitate back to people that ask me for stuff, I take pride in knowing that I was right. So I don't want to be wrong. And I feel like a lot of times where it's like, because I've been through a lot of stuff where it's like I've been disrespected, I've been this, I've been that. It's like, dang, me being the person that like, everyone knows in life to know that I'm not a liar, and I don't. There's never a day where I don't work hard. That would bother me the most if the one day they came to me about something and I didn't know the answer, and I'm like, dang, like, what use am I if I don't be able to provide you the truth? What use am I if I'm not able to provide you the information? And that could be far from the truth as it could possibly be, but that could be your truth. Like that could be what you're dealing with on the inside. So some people feel like they have a lot to lose when they're wrong. So they go to the ends of the earth just to not be wrong. So that's just how I feel about it.
I
So
don't have any other thoughts after that.
I guess to sum up to all of this, you know, it's not about whether you're right. It's not about whether you're wrong. It's what you do when you find out you are wrong. And what do you do when you find out that you may be right, but you make someone feel a certain way? I feel like apologizing plays a big part in it. Just whether you're right or wrong, there's always a room to apologize where it's like, hey, I messed up on how I expressed the information. Hey, I messed up on how I received the information. It's just it's all in perspective. It's all in how you feel like you can mitigate the situation. So let's be more open to communication. Let's be more open to explaining to people stories about ourselves or small little perks about ourselves that we think could be small, but they can be big to somebody else, especially down the long run. Really sit back and think to yourself, is there something I'm not telling blank that if it was told to me over a certain amount of time, it would affect me negatively? Let's think about that. So on that note, it's been another episode of Normalize You, and we're out.
Thanks for watching Normalize You. And don't forget to catch me every other Friday with your question of the week. And you can send in questions as well. Please reach out on our social media or our email and send us your questions, your topics, your responses. We actually do read them. Hope to see you there.